Hello, it's Patricia Warby, Alchemy Therapies here, and today I want to talk about Life Illuminated, a book I wrote in 2019, which was very prescient actually, just before the COVID pandemic struck us. And I was trying to break the paradigm that we've been currently under, which is the biomolecular model, that we're basically just a bag of chemicals, like billiard balls knocking into each other and causing these kind of enzymatic interactions. And it turns out that that's very far from the truth, that we're actually biophysical. We have a polarization within our bodies and within our cells that operates bioelectrically, and that chemistry is downstream from that actual beginning. And bioelectricity explains everything from how we develop, how we evolve, how we came to be here in the first place, how our bodies instantaneously communicate throughout the system without needing those chemical reactions, which are far too slow to provide the kind of integration that we perceive in our environment as we're operating within it. So what's new? I've updated. There was so much new information in the 5 years that have passed since 2019, and so much to say about the route we went down during that particular 2 or 3 years that I really needed to kind of rewrite the whole thing. And so it's got several expanded chapters. It's been completely reworked. And so I thought it would be a good timing to kind of go through what I've done there and what's new. So the book starts with a consideration of the bioelectric cell, how the cell actually organizes itself rather than the way we were taught mostly in biology, and that cell structure, because we often look at it as a sort of 2D representation that's frozen in time. We don't actually see the movement and the vibration, the resonance of the structures within the cell. So we look at DNA, for instance, from a completely new concept, that it's a vibrating molecule that transmits information. It's more like an antenna than it is just a sort of code. I also bring in a new idea of development and how the organism organizes according to this bioelectric polarization. And this has been covered a lot recently. It's fascinating that you can cut certain organisms in half and they'll redevelop a new head or a new tail. But actually, if you disturb the electrical environment, they'll grow two heads or two tails, or have a completely different morphology, which suggests, therefore, that it's electricity or polarization that actually transmits information rather than just chemistry. So that's the new bit there. Then I wanted to look at quantum mechanics. This is the understanding that quantum physics interacts with the body. And in fact, I would now even blow that apart and say we are quantum mechanical, interacting with a classical universe. What do I mean by that? I mean, classical is the old school, 100-year-old technology, if you like, of understanding this physical material world that we interact with. That this is a solid table and I have a solid body. And the quantum mechanical view says this is a vibratory set of probabilities that exist in all time, in all space. It may sound really strange, and it is. Quantum mechanics is really, really strange. But in the interpretation I gave in 2019, we were still believing at that point that the consensus was that that matter is both wave and particle at the same time. It's that possibility occurring, and it's only through consciousness interacting with it, in other words, us measuring it or seeing it, that we kind of collapse the wave function into solid matter. But of course, that's been questioned too, and some of the work from Nassim Haramein and others has suggested that we need to bring back into the discussion the field in which we're embedded. And in fact, that is the wave function, if you like. That is the waves that we see, and that matter is kind of moving through that and creating wave-like interference patterns. So I needed to rewrite that section in order to reimagine the idea that the ether or the biofield or the field that we're embedded in is a really important constituent part, and that theoretical physics, which misses it out entirely, doesn't live in the real world, of course, it's theoretical. And we do live in the real world. So we are a mixture of quantum mechanical and classical interactions. What do I mean by classical? I mean the old Newtonian ideas of solid things with deterministic probabilities. In other words, if this happens, this is the reaction, and you can describe it mathematically. And it appears obviously that we are in a classical world. You know, if I drop an apple, it's going to fall to the ground. But we're also quantum. At a cellular level, we are using instantaneous communication through entanglement, through electron tunneling. These are all really weird and wacky ideas that have come to the fore recently in what's now largely thought of as quantum biology. So I had to rewrite that chapter almost entirely. And then going on to a later chapter, I was looking at light therapy, including some of the new innovations that we're seeing, including some that you can download onto your phone and use as a sort of means of changing your brain states from what you're normally going to be in, particularly if you're busy, is going to be a beta wave function. And that's very high frequency, high energy. But if you can find a technology that brings your brainwaves down into a more calm state of alpha, theta, or delta, these are slower brainwave states. They're much more akin to meditation or being in a flow state. And there are simple technologies that everyone can afford, which you can download and use. And so I covered some of those because this is an expanding field, okay? The bioelectric nature of the human experience. And it isn't taught in school, and it isn't taught in universities even, because unfortunately theoretical physics has kind of taken over and not considered that quantum effects would actually operate in a warm, wet environment of the body, but it couldn't be further from the truth. This is how the body organizes. It's actually allowing for almost instantaneous communication. Recently, I did a review of a book by Mei-Wan Ho. I'll include that in the show notes below, where she was saying that the whole nature of the way the body works is this interaction, and that it's not a strange thing at all. It's actually how we've evolved to interact in a intelligent, communicative, conscious way. I also needed to include some new information on threats to our health and well-being in this bioelectric universe in which we're embedded. And one of the biggest ones at the moment, which I've also covered recently in a separate video, is blue light. You know, LEDs, screens, you see people glued to those all the time. It's really, really damaging our brains, because we are adapted through the eyes to absorb full spectrum lighting, which includes red and infrared and ultraviolet. And just because we can't see those wavelengths doesn't mean they are important, because we've actually got receptors in the eye, not just for visible light, but for UV and also infrared. And that communicates information, not just about the time of day, which is really important. That's our circadian biology, but also about our hormone balance. Something that came up recently was that the eyes are a hormone producing organ. Who knew? Certain hormones, neuromelanin, melanopsin, which is a receptor, but it interacts with the neurohormonal system to affect not only our cortisol production, tells us to produce more cortisol, that's what wakes us up in the morning normally, and the reduction in cortisol is what normally helps us alongside melatonin to feel sleepy. And that's completely being reversed because we're embedded in a world in which we have constant blue light, which is like having a constant source of midday daylight. It's telling us, wake up, be alert. And it's causing terrible issues with insomnia, but also blood sugar regulation. Now, this is new information too, which I didn't know, was that the information that you're absorbing through your eyes actually affects the hormonal balance that breaks down sugars in your blood through insulin and cortisol, which are kind of in opposition. And if we don't have enough red light, and we're always thinking it's daylight, we basically our blood sugars don't get cleared. And so we're always likely to have metabolic syndrome or pre-diabetes, because we're we're constantly flooding our body with the wrong information. So that was something I wanted to include, and it's fascinating science. It really is. And then finally, I come into new innovations in bioresonance and energy medicine. And I wanted to cover some of the easy options for people to change their light diet, because it isn't all about expensive technology. Some of it is just about changing the basics. Do you see sunrise? Do you get out in the morning? Do you expose your eyes without glasses or contacts or glass, being behind a car windscreen, to daylight? Do you see daylight? If you don't, you need to make an effort to go out and see daylight in the morning. And then, do you block the blue screen light that you're constantly being bombarded with blue blocking glasses? Simple things, they're not expensive. Getting your sleep right, making sure that your room is in darkness when you go to sleep rather than bathed in artificial light and full of electronic gadgets that are subtly, electromagnetically giving off radiation. So getting the basics right is really important. And finally, a message of hope for the future is that we are going through a profound transformation in our understanding of consciousness and what it is, and that it is basically the organizing structure of the universe. It's very hard to put into words because it's not a structure, it's an energy, it's a vibration, but it creates the basis for all life. And in fact, matter is secondary, fields are secondary. Consciousness is primary, fields are secondary, and then matter is a kind of agglomeration of the fields that exist within a conscious universe. And so, folks, if this sounds interesting to you, please, I'll include the links to the book in the show notes. Also, I'd like to encourage you, please subscribe, please like if you found this content interesting. It helps my channel to move ahead in the system. I get more viewers, and please, look me up. You can find me on alchemytherapies.co.uk, and look forward to hearing from you. Bye for now.